thought,
Okay, is that better? Can you hear me? No, still can't hear me? Keep
Just
pressing.
project.
Wow, just get close.
Projecting.
Okay. Got now. All righty, thank you, Jerry. I'll talk right into it. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, all of our regular members, all of our honored guests, and all of our visitors. We're going to start this meeting tonight with our pledge, and Webb mentioned is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right, all you veterans, I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm dispensing with our regular business meeting tonight, but I do have some announcements. First of all, next Monday at 1 o'clock, the book committee is meeting with a Mr. Mark Thomas of MT Publishing about the new pictorial history book. Any members or anyone who is interested in meeting with Mr. Thomas to see what he has to offer us in the way of publishing a new book is more than welcome to come. It will be at 1 o'clock here at City Hall. June meeting is a joint meeting with the Stewart County Historical Society, and we will be meeting at the W.D. Sykes Museum in Dover at 7 p.m. And the date is June 22nd. I did make up some more of these, which is our schedule for the year. I've got about 40 of them tonight if anyone wants to pick those up. Our July meeting is still on for a cookout at the McCampbell's. It's going to be on July 13th, which is our regular Tuesday at 6 o'clock at night. And John Richardson is going to be our speaker that night. He's going to speak on beaver trapping on Yellow Creek. And I brought a teaser. This is a picture Mr. Richardson sent me a couple of years ago of the biggest beaver that he had caught to that date on Yellow Creek. It was a 46-pound beaver, and he caught it sometime during 2004-2005 trapping season. And I do want to thank Susan Bell for providing the refreshments tonight and coordinating the table. I appreciate that, Susan. I'm going to put our schedules down here, like I said, for anyone who wants to pick one up. Tonight, Pastor Moody is here to talk to us, and he's been a Houston County resident since 1974. That's 36 years, and I really don't think there's much I can tell you all about him that you don't already know after 36 years. But what did he do before he came to Houston County? Well, I do know he was born in Harriman, Tennessee. He served in the United States Air Force. He graduated from UT, I don't know what year. 66. And he graduated from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. And I also know that he pastored 3 churches before he came to Houston County. And tonight he's going to tell us about one of his experiences in Jamestown. So I'm going to turn it over to Pastor Moody.
Thank you. Well, she's given me a lot of time, ain't she? You know, Baptist preachers, we don't usually have manuscripts, but this is not a sermon tonight, but I did this for the record. And I'm going by it pretty closely, but it's an honor to be here and to speak about my experiences, not only here, but Jamestown, where I was there only 3 years, from November of 1969 to November of 1972. It was my first full-time pastorate. There I went to Lake City First Baptist for a year and a half. And then, strangely enough, I got a call from Webb Mitchell at Morris Hayline. They were looking for a preacher in 1974. And they were going to come to hear me preach somewhere, but they couldn't make it. O.C. Preston died, and they said, "Will you come to our place?" I said, "If you'll tell me how to get there, I've never been there." So they did, and that's the rest of the story. We have never left. We were called officially July the 1st, 1974, and retired here twice. And I think it's about a third time. I haven't received that call yet, but it may come about. One thing I believe in is being to the point and being brief as possible, and speaking so that people can hear. So I hope you can hear me tonight. I will speak. Preachers are used to projecting a little bit better than people who do not speak a lot, and it's important. My first church was a seminary church, part-time church. Had an old fellow that sat on about the second, third row to my left. His name was Sammy DeVore. He always had one of these old-time hearing aids, but it didn't do any good. He said he couldn't hear a thing, but he always smiled and seemed to enjoy church. And I said, Sammy, do you hear anything? He said, I don't hear nothing. But said, I just like being here. So I preached to Sammy, and I figured if he could hear me, anybody else could. And I tried hard. Most of us remember Art Linkletter. If you don't, then you're very young. But he had a program, I think it was on radio first, I forgot, called People Are Funny. And we all know that's true. People are funny, and one of our greatest thrills is watching people that we like to watch. That's what my family did in Harriman for entertainment. On summer nights, sit on the front porch and watch people come from across the bridge from South Harriman, walk into the big town of Harriman. And we would watch them march up the street. Most of them marched in a line. My mother said that's because before they got over here, they walked on a path. And there wasn't room. So they came to town and they walked single file, and we enjoyed that. We're all connected in by history, and just talking to people like I talked to Ed before. His father was in the hospital at St. Thomas. In St. Thomas at the same time, Sergeant York was there one time. So there's all kinds of connections, and we're connected to each other. During my tenure in Jamestown, I met a very interesting man. Rena Clark is from Jimtown, as they call it. His name was A.R. Hogue, Albert Hogue. And the way I got to know him was I was on radio sometime. Our morning worship service, we paid for 1 hour worship service every Sunday morning was broadcast live. So I was live on the radio for 3 years. You have to be careful what you say, because it's not taken. Sometimes I got in trouble, I promise you. But Mr. Hogue had a history program, 15-minute program on the radio station, WCLC, owned by a Baptist preacher, independent Baptist preacher there. And I followed him, our program followed him, and one day he called me and said, "This is A.R. Hogue, Brother Moody, and I know you believe in God. There ain't no God." I said, "I challenge you to a debate on the radio." And I said, "Mr. Hogue, where do you live?" And he told me. And I said, "First of all, let's meet one another." I'd seen him, but I hadn't spoken to him. So I got to know that man. And that's another story itself. And I'll tell it perhaps sometime. But he lived to be over 100 years old. He died in the Fentress County Nursing Home. But we became friends. He became a believer. I don't think he ever was an atheist. I believe he was just a little senile on that day. He just wanted to argue. But he did teach me one thing I'll never forget. He said, "You know, I'm a school teacher, I'm a lawyer, I'm a librarian, principal." He told me all these things he did. I don't know whether he did them all or not. But I know he was heavily involved with the Tennessee Library and Archives. He was not a fool. He was an educated man. But he said, you can read all about the dates and histories and wars and generals, but he said, the only history I care about is people history. And visiting in his shack where he lived, he had stacks and stacks of papers and books that were filled with personal family histories all over the mountain. Crossville, Cumberland County, Fentress County, Pickett County, all those places. And he kept records, and I've often wondered what happened to all of those records. I'm sure that among those records were many interesting things about Sergeant York and his family. But from that time, I never lost that ideal. Keep family histories. Now, I have not kept a daily journal all my life, but I picked it up in 1993. I decided on the spur of the moment, I think I'll just start keeping a journal. And so for the last 17 years, I've kept a daily journal. And in it is everything from when Alabama beat Tennessee, or Vanderbilt, I hate to admit it, beat Tennessee. Oh, I hate to write about that. But it was there. And I kept those records and still do. When I was at Jamestown, I kept the bulletins. So we have a church bulletin, that's most churches do. And when I left there, I had them bound. And I gave them to my daughter. It was three years, 3 bound copies. And my daughter was born in Jamestown, and I gave them to her several years ago. I may have to borrow them back to look through them and find out some facts I need to know. But I began to do that. And when I came here in 1974 until my retirement, in 99, the first time, we kept those bulletins. After I retired, Kathy Powell and we had them laminated by the print shop, and they're on record in our church from 1974 to 2010. Now, that's a history. That's a history that it's not just about the church. We can go back in it and find out about the flood of 81 in there. I can find about somebody I married, or somebody who had a funeral, or whatever it may, who joined the church, who was baptized, or what happened in the community. But it's very important to keep some kind of records. I have my great-great-grandmother's Bible. She was a Methodist Sunday school teacher up in Indiana. But she never wrote one sentence in her Bible. You know, a lot of people don't. She might be ashamed of my Bibles because they're filled up with notes and letters or notes to my children and grandchildren. So after I'm gone, maybe they'll read it. It'll be interesting to them. Because we're all connected, and I'm bringing that up as I speak about Sergeant York in a minute. We're all connected. I had a great uncle who's now deceased, Earl C. Parrish Jr., and he did some family history research on his family side, and he let me read it one day, and I discovered through his record that the Parrish family, my mother's side of the family, his side, he claims that my ancestors, helped William Penn lay out the streets of Philadelphia. Well, I hope that's true, but one of my other relatives said I wouldn't take that. I wouldn't take that to risk. But what I liked about he was a sort of a historian. He at least was trying to establish the present to the past and the present to the future. My grandmother, my wife's great-great-grandfather, for a fact, was a horseback riding preacher, Methodist preacher in the mountains of Smoky Mountains and Cage Cove. And they have some records somewhere that he wasn't paid in dollars and cents. He was paid with liquor, moonshine, I guess, and tobacco, as they called it. And then he took that to the market and drank it. He didn't teach much about alcohol, I'm sure, because he needed it. And then her only surviving aunt, who lives in Bristol, who's 90 years old now, she told me, and I have no reason to doubt it, that she has written proof that she is a direct descendant of Daniel Boone. I've heard other people say that, but I hope that's true, and it may be, it may not be, or just hope to be. But I've come today to speak to the Historical Society about my brief relationship, and that's how I wrote it, my brief relationship. Because it was only just for 3 years, and I didn't see Miss Gracie that often, but I did get to know her somewhat, and one of her children fairly well, and I've seen him since moving to Jamestown. I've run into him in the Veterans Hospital. He would bring people from Fentress County and Pickett County to the hospital who couldn't get transportation. The story of Alvin Cullum York begins really with his great-great-grandfather Conrad Pyle, and the record says his real name, they call him Old Coonrod. You know, we like nicknames more than we do our regular names. And I'm told he was one of the last long hunters of the East, and they came into the valley of the Three Forks of the Wolf River, where Sergeant York was raised. Sometime late in the 18th century. He was born in 1766, and he died in 1849. He saw his valley home change from the state of Franklin, I don't guess any of us remember that, to a part of the state of Kentucky. It used to be a part of Kentucky. We had boundary disputes then, as they do now down in Chattanooga. And the abstracts of the deeds to the land he owned showed that Pall Mall was first in Granger County, I never would have thought that, later in Overton, and finally in Fentress as the state of Tennessee developed. Pall Mall itself was made a post office April the 3rd, 1832. And old Coonrod, I'd rather say that as Conrad, he was quite a businessman, the record shows. And he was, in fact, a close friend of John M. Clemens, the father of Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain, who lived in Jimtown. Obedstown was his first name. And at one time, Mr. Clemens owned 1/15 of all the land there in Obedstown, however big it was then. Another friend of Coonrod was David Crockett. We all know him. He lived to be 83 years old, and at the time of his death was the most influential person in Fentress County. So Sergeant York came from the stock. He came from the old brood. Coonrod had 8 children, and his son Elijah, the branch of the family from which Alvin came, had 11 children. That portion of the estate which Elijah inherited passed into good hands. He conserved his part and handled well the talents that he had. But when they divided it the second time, you know, someone dies, the children get it. And divided 11 ways. The ravages of the Civil War, the years that followed, left only 75 acres. And that's what, when you see that movie, out in York, Sergeant York, he wanted to have a bottom land, and he was up on the mountain, rocks, just poor land. That was a 75 acres. And Mary Brooks York inherited that. We all know her to be the little mountain mother of Sergeant Alvin C. York. And she passed on to him those characteristics and qualities that made him the man that he was. And I would not want to paint Sergeant York any more than he would want to be painted, because if you read anything of Sergeant York, he was a humble man. And he could have been a very wealthy man, but he chose not to be, because his primary drive after he returned from the war was education. He had very little. He was the greatest civilian soldier of World War I, General John J. Pershing, who gave him the Congressional Medal of Honor in 1918, said that he was a citizen soldier. There were many great soldiers, and I'm sure that Sergeant York would say, well, there were others besides me. He was born there in the Valley of the Three Forks. Some of you have been there. I know Rena has, and others have been there. I know Danette has been there. And I've sat down there at his tomb, his graveside, looked up the mountains, see the Wolf River. It's a very peaceful place. I used to go down there with Caleb just to get away from all the noise and everything else, just to get away. But he was born there in 1887, and he lived to be almost 77 years old. He was the son of William and Mary Brooks York, one of 11 children. All of them redheads. Along with, now I just want to give a little recap of what he did. You all know this. He gave credit to his men, and they deserved some of it. But along with 16 other soldiers, Corporal York then captured 28 machine guns, most of them by himself, killed over 25 enemies, Germans, and took almost single-handedly 132 prisoners, relying upon the marksmanship that he learned in the woods, shooting turkey. We always look and say, go, go! And I guess most people, that's what they remember from the movie. Him winning that prize so he could buy the bottomland and marry his beloved sweetheart, which he eventually did. But he learned those skills because he had to be a good marksman to eat. That makes a difference. I couldn't hit the wrong side of a bar. My dad wouldn't let me own a gun, and when I left, graduated from high school, rolled back, he was hunting. He bought a gun and started hunting. I never got to hunt, not a day in my life. I fished. But if you and I, and some of you are good marksmen, if you have to live, you'll do it. You'll do what you have to. He left for Camp Gordon, Georgia in 1917 when he was drafted at the age of 30. He was not a conscientious objector ever, but he did not believe in killing, didn't want to kill. And he fought that battle, and that movie pretty much tells the straight of it. That he really had to wrestle with his conscience. How can I go and kill anybody? And he finally came to that decision through studying the Bible and through his superior officers and just through his own search. You and I can go, I drive down to halfway to Memphis a lot to pick up my granddaughter, meet my son. That's just 170 miles. I do that, take an hour and 15 minutes, 2 hours and a half, I'll be back. I don't stop to eat a McDonald's burger up before I leave. But his whole world was a 100-mile radius from Jamestown. He had Albany, Kentucky to the north. I've been there, some of you have. Salina to the west, Jamestown to the south, and Harriman to the east, where I was born. And it was in Harriman, I didn't know this until I began to do some research. That's where he boarded the train to go into the Army. Had to drive to Harriman through Crossroads and all that. And during his experience overseas, he realized, can I just be plain, how ignorant he was. He was not dumb. He just didn't have an education. He just didn't know much. And he evidently made up his mind, if he survived, and he was convinced that he would survive, that he would see what he could do when he got back to improve the lot of those who would follow him, and he did. Now, his father, William, was kicked by a mule. Reminds me of Sam Gazelle and some of these around here always get run over by cows or something, or bulls. But his father died from a mule. And York was about 22 or 3 when that happened. He became the man of the family because his 2 other brothers were married and gone, and so he had to carry on. And his mother, by herself and with the help of her children, they raised those 11 children. She was once asked about her philosophy of life. I told this at the American Legion meeting last year, and she replied, let me quote this. I'm going to say it the way she said it. I ain't had much learning that comes out of books, but I brung up by the hair of the head, all alone, in a one-room log cabin, 11 red-headed kids that are all alive and well today, and that learns you something about living. My friends, she had an education, and she was a smart person who could do that. The movie tells about how wild Alvin was, and they sort of play it up a little bit. But he was. And somewhere in the record it says he probably did like a lot of people. He had to find relief somehow. And working day and night, plowing on old, terrible ground. He went out with some of his friends, he'd drink a little, dance a little, raise cane. One night he came in, poor little mother was sitting there waiting on him. I just imagine tapping her foot, that shawl on her. And he said, "Why didn't you lay down? Why'd you wait up for me?" She said, "Alvin, I can't lay down. I don't know what's going to become of you out here drinking and carousing. So I just sit up and wait for you to come in." She said to him, "When are you going to be a man like your grandpa and your dad? When are you going to become a man?" And Alvin promised her that he would quit drinking. And he says, and his children verified it. Whatever year that was, he never touched another drop. He never used profanity. He had daily Bible lessons with his children as they grew up. He became a real man. He was not hitting the lightning on a horse and going into the church and converting, but rather he went to church, he heard the preaching, he went to a revival like many of us have. He heard the preacher, his heart was convicted, he became a Christian. Became an elder in his church along with his relative Rochelle Powell, who was the postmaster, and you see him in the movie, and also was his pastor and spiritual advisor. And the movie is correct when it says that he persuaded Alvin not to turn down the draft, not run from it, not refuse it, but go to the draft board. And he did. And he was drafted, in spite of them telling him that he did not believe in killing, did not want to fight. But he became a Christian gentleman. I wish that I had known him, just like when I came here in 1974 and heard about Carlisle Mitchell, George Miles, and many others. I wished I'd had the privilege to know them. For it's evident to me that many of them and many of others that some of you are relatives of, I wished I had known him. He was a champion for education. His oldest son living, George Edward York, the retired Nazarene minister, wrote these words in 1966. Again, I want to read. He was an international figure, known around the world, yet he never expressed in any way a feeling of importance or felt that he had really done anything to bring him worldwide fame and recognition. He would always say, "I only did my duty to God and my country, and every man should do this." And I'm going to present the Society with a book, and you can read the facts. But I'm going to just spend a little time letting you know how I came to know Miss Gracie. It was never a real close relationship. When I lived there, and when I went back to visit a few times, she remembered me. And I'm sure if someone asked Andrew Jackson York, who's the one that works at the grist mill, the ranger there, Andrew Jackson would remember me, even though it's been nearly 40 years since I left, because I knew them well enough to be with them. I treasure that relationship. I don't brag about it because it wasn't an intimate, long-time relationship. And I've known many people like that. There have been many people since I came to Houston County. They're just, Miss Janie Satterwhite comes to mind, and others like her. Just tremendous people. But I found out in my relationship with her and the family that we are all connected. And I get excited to know that we are connected. Not only that we're related, sometimes, well, I'm related to you, didn't know it. I remember when I was in Jamestown, a man came up from Moodyville, which is just down the road toward Birdstown, or Birdtown as we say. And his name was Moody, Moodyville. And later I preached a revival there. He came up with a stack of papers. He said, "I've been trying to find out whether we're related, and I don't think we are." I said, "No, sir. As far as I know, we're not." But I still enjoyed that connection. I played golf one time up there in Allard, Tennessee, at the country club, the golf course. And the man I played with, I said, "What's your name?" He said, "Cordell Hull." He said, "Now wait a minute." He said, "I'm alive, he's dead." He said, "There's many of us around here named Cordell Hull." He said, "Hulls are a dime a dozen, Cordells about the same." But it's just great to have those connections. Several years ago, I found out about the York Foundation that's trying to save the York Institute buildings. And they recently received, a year or so ago, they received a sizable grant of over $1 million. And are in the process, I think, of preserving that building. But since then, York Institute is now in grave danger. The state has taken away its funding, so I don't know how much longer that's going to last. As I said, I met Miss Gracie by speaking on the radio quite often, not only our church services, but at a ministerial association. And all the churches around, all the preachers were supposed to take equal parts, because when your week came up, you were there at, say, 8:30 at WDEB, where one of my deacons on that radio station. And the Independent Baptist preacher on the other WCLC. You did a 15-minute Bible study. You had 15 minutes to go across town, which wasn't hard, to go to WCLC, and do another one. Well, Mr. Hogue was at 15 minutes before, so that's where we came across. So a lot of times they would call me up to the radio station, especially with my deacon, and say, "Brother Moody, I'm in a fix. So-and-so can't come or won't come to do this devotion we don't have. Could you do it?" So I'd take my Bible and off the cuff, and still do a little bit of that, and go over and do that. And one day, I don't know when it was, but the phone rang at home or in my office, and she said, "Brother Moody, you don't know, but this Miss Gracie York, and I hear you on the radio, and I like to listen to you." I can't remember the exact conversation. "And I have a few questions I'd like to ask you. I wonder if you can come down sometime under the mountain." I know Rena's heard that. Come down under the mountain. Go off the mountain from Jamestown down to Pine Haven on down to Pall Mall. And I did. And I think the first time I went down there, they was eating breakfast. She had her hair in rollers, knocked on the door. "Come in, Brother Moody." And Thomas Jefferson York, and Andrew Jackson York, and Betsy Ross York, I don't know, Lowry, I believe is her married name, and one of the granddaughters were there eating breakfast. "Sit down, I'll pour you a cup of coffee, you need this." I may have, may not, but anyway, we talked. And just a few times I did that. I would run into her at other places. And I must say that Andrew Jackson York was the one that I saw the most. And he still, I think that Charles Edward and he and one daughter, Betsy Ross Lowry, are the only surviving children of York. Well, let me fast forward. It came to Houston County. And somewhere in the late 70s, got a call from Jamestown. They thought it might be nice if I come back and preach a series of services. And I said, "Well, I got some things to say." So I did. I went back. I had a nice 3 or 4 days there. And they called a minister of music from over near Sweetwater. Nice man. And during the revival service, he said, "I understand you know Miss Gracie York." I said, "Well, not real well, but I know her enough that she knows me." He said, "I wonder if you'd take me down to meet her." I said, "Let me just call her." So I called her. Sure enough, she said, "Why, sure, come on down, bring it." And we went down and tickled him to death to be able to meet Miss Gracie. But she also served as a gray lady at the Fentress County Hospital. And I always saw her as a giant. She was not real short, she wasn't tall, just average height. But compared to her husband, she looked short. He was 6 foot, broad shouldered. She was probably 5'4", 5. Miss Gracie was tall in stature. She was tall in her love for life and people. She never considered herself a famous person. She knew what Alvin had done. But she, like him, didn't go to her head. No more new veterans on the front line, Korea, World War II, the holes of, like Jimmy Ross in Vietnam, crawling in and out, not knowing whether you come out alive or not. She knew he was a great man, but she never let it go to seed on her. And in fact, one of our conversations, she told me, I went down to see her, and she said, you know what they did to Alvin's grave again? I said, no, Miss Grace, I don't. She said, well, you know, they got his picture on there in case like a cameo, and said, go down there and they chisel that off, take it off, sell it, I don't know what to do with it. She said, when I die, said, they won't want my picture, I promise you. They won't bother me because they'll probably still be getting Alvin's picture. Well, you know, I haven't been back since she died, but I'm going, I think, in a month or two. Be it that way, I'm going to go by. And I hope that her picture's right there beside Alvin, because she certainly deserves it. She supported him. He could have been a very wealthy man, but he used the money that he received from that movie and other sources to build those schools. And he didn't do it through the IRS way, so he didn't get credit. So he got in trouble with IRS. Some of our congressmen had to bail him out, and they raised $50,000 to pay Alvin C. York's way out of trouble with IRS. Nowadays, these millionaires flip $1 million off. Be counted as a hero, but they were going to hold him to the fire for it. He just didn't know how to do it the right way, didn't receive the right counsel. But he took every penny that was given to him and helped build those buildings that became York Institute, the only state-supported school in Tennessee. Long after I left Jamestown, I was talking to my dad. I'm not sure it was the year he died or before. Died in 1988. But he said, son, I never did tell you, but I used to visit New York. I delivered goods down there at that general store. I knew Andrew Jackson. I knew most of his brothers, sisters. And I knew Miss Gracie. Said I saw Alvin York a few times. And I didn't know we were connected. You know, that Dad had any connection. I never heard much about Sergeant York. World War II took over the stage when I was growing up. He also told me, he said, I also had a friend there that worked in the Jamestown shirt factory. He had the concessions there. His name was Carl Matthews. I said, well, I know Carl Matthews. I said, yes, he was blind. But he was one of the first men I knew outside the church. He called me up and said, this is Carl Matthews, and I understand you're the head of the Red Cross blood drive, and I give blood every time they come. When are they coming? And Carl Matthews gave blood as often as he could. And he had a daughter, and she's here tonight, Rena Clark. Rena Matthews Clark. And in 1970, she graduated from York Institute. I preached her baccalaureate, and I think I just assisted in the graduation. I'm not sure, but I was on the stage with Tommy Burnett, who used to be a legislator, was a Church of Christ minister back in those days, and a former Methodist pastor. But that was just amazing that we connected. And after this program, and I'm going to hurry through, I promised you it would not be long. And, you know, Baptist preachers have watches that don't usually mean anything. But I try to keep to it. But when I came here, I met Rena. I saw Rena at church. And she was married to George E. Clark. Old Jimtown girl. Small world. Then I found out just a day or so ago that she was at the burial of Sergeant York in 1964. And I believe I calculated 12-year-old girl. 8,000 people attended. One other thing of connections, I went to Rotary Club with Al Mitchell one time in Clarksville to make up, and Roger Powell, who was the county agent there, extension agent, had the program. I knew Roger from Jamestown. I married his brother, performed the wedding for his brother. I didn't marry you, brother. I've married a lot of people, you know, I'm a bigamist. But Roger and Joe, I think, were relatives of Rosh Hashanah. And I have a deacon that I still, and his wife, Red Williams, there in Jamestown, it's related to this Gracie Williams side. And our daughter, as I say, was born there July the 12th, 1970, in Jamestown, Fentress County General Hospital. And well, she's always been proud of her roots. That's why I gave her those bound copies. Just one thing as I close, in connections. As you see, my relationships with Miss Gracie were very, sparse, but I'm glad I got to know her. I wished I'd known her more, and I'm looking forward to going back. I'm glad to be able to support. And I have a few memorabilia over here, and just figured to look at some pictures that you won't find anywhere else that I found a newspaper clipping that I cut out of my hometown paper back in the late 80s or early 90s. And but when we came here, we had some records. Baptists don't always keep the best records. Neither. But anyway, I was reading through and I read Bernard Skates, and somewhere it said it had a revival somewhere in 1935 or 6 or 7 with an old C. Rainwater from Harriman. Well, he was my pastor. And he baptized me. And he baptized, or at least Jeanette Spencer and Lucille Christensen, I think, were converted under Bernard Skates' ministry, and maybe that revival. And Jeanette and Joe, great friends, golf partners of mine, and friends of all of Houston County and all this area. But I love those kind of connections. I like connected through Sid with his brother and others. Connected forever. Alvin C. York was buried in Paul Ball. I'm closing. And played Onward Christian Soldiers as his favorite song. 21 gun salute, taps, coffin being lowered. This was written about him later. Heroes come and go. Listen to it. The world exalts one for a time, then drops him for another. And all this, there's comfort in knowing that what truly matters in life is the one who follows the Lord's leading can be certain of his or her destination. Neither Gracie nor those who have ever heard the tiniest bit about Sergeant York have any doubt that Sergeant York is down in the hands of God. It is said that he said at the hospital before he died these words. He wanted to go back home. Don't we all? I'd rather die in a home. I don't want to die in a nursing home or a hospital. Probably will. I'd rather die at home. I'd rather not die. I'd rather go on down. But he said, if I don't go back home to Paul Mall today, I will go to heaven. And he said this interesting little quirk, and that be the truth. That helps me know the man. And that be the truth. Thank you for letting me share just a little bit of what I know, and I'll conclude with that. If you have any questions, well, we can talk later. Thank you.
Brother Paul, before you close out, I'm really tickled that you did this. I had talked to Miss Nina Finley earlier this week to find out about this. And it tickled me because Sergeant York does have some ties to this community. Some of the men in this community served with him. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Alvin C. York. My grandfather was Dallas Russell Lewis, and he served with Mr. York. Mr. York also saved his life in the Army. He served with him right out of here. Him and his brothers there was 12 brothers, and 7 of them left and 6 come back. My grandfather come back. He not only did he believe in Sergeant York, he named his son Alvin after Alvin C. York. My father was named after another man in their group named Milford Lyons. And so yes, he does have ties to this community, because there's some of us that wouldn't be here without him.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Thank you.
I'm Bob McKinnon. On behalf of the Houston County Historical Society, we want to welcome all of you, especially those who served in Korea, the conflict/war. And tonight we honor you for your service to our country. We will issue certificates of appreciation to you along with a membership paid up for life to the Houston County Historical Society. And we hope that you will take advantage of it because you'll enjoy it a lot by coming to these meetings. Not only that, I know you can contribute a lot to our society. So tonight we honor you for your service to our country. As I call your name, come forward and you will be issued a certificate of appreciation for your service. Jesse O. Alsbrooks. William F. Barnes. Donald Beard. You give him.
Mr. Biggs, I've just been informed I'm getting there. Thank you for your service. Is that the last one?
You and Booker both. Stay hard.
You mean Gil Booker one?
No. Michael Bell.
I don't believe Dr. Bell's here.
Carmen Bishop.
I don't believe Mr. Bishop is here.
George Alsbrooks. In other words. Robert H. Carter. Bill Clegren. He is in the hospital or he'll be in. I think he's coming home tomorrow, but he's not here for sure. Donald Cooksey.
Almost not here.
Billy Ellingston. I know Billy's here. Fred Finley. Jerry Fazell.
He's not here.
It's pretty easy work, ain't it?
Ernest Harris. J.D. Harvey. James Irwin.
There you go. You know,
Paul McDowell.
don't see him.
I don't know if he was here.
He's sick.
Reed Milam. Robert G. Nolan.
He's not here.
Eddie Ramey.
Eddie's not here either.
Artie Tanner. Billy Weaver.
Billy's not here.
Frank Young.
I don't believe Frank here either.
Ray Brotherton. Kenneth Douglas.
You probably can't get out. That was a road.
Glenn Strang. Herbert Trizzy.
He's not here either.
James Martin.
Good work.
Now, did we miss anyone here tonight that's here that has not been on our list? Is anyone here? Okay. When this is over, will you please get in touch with our president, Annetta James, and she'll make sure that we get you. Okay?
What's your name, sir?
Has anyone else been missed? Okay, now, as I said before, y'all receive a lifetime membership paid up to a historical society, and we want you to take advantage of it and become an active member with us, because you'll enjoy a lot of these meetings. We have a lot of interesting programs, and I know that you can contribute a lot to our society. Now, we'd like to have everybody here to have our group photo. If you want to do this now, after,
Just the veterans.
well, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay,
Well,
just
yeah.
said everybody.
Okay. Korean War veterans
Yes, the Korean.
assemble for a group photo. Now, when you want to do this?
Right
Now?
now.
Huh?
Right now.
Okay, everybody come forward. Next way.
Let's see, Venus and Charlie, that's who we, right, Charlie Brett,
Okay.
I can get their photo. If our Korean War vets will come up for a group picture.
Charlie, you and Thetis too.
Turn it over to you.
What's your name, sir?
Hop up here, George.
Charles R. Britt. B-R-I-T-T.
All right, you got you on camera then. Thank you.
I found your wallet. What about right over here on the cemetery? It may have probably ledge,
Oh, that's fine.
but right there, Jim.
I think Mr. Cherry and Charlie will come to front. I can't see you back there. And Yep, can't see Fred. If you can't see me,